Neural Darwinism, the brain's inner jungle. Sounds pretty wild, right? For a long time, we've had this neat and tidy metaphor for the brain. It's a computer. But what if that's all wrong? Today, we're going to toss that idea out the window and replace it with something a lot more, well, chaotic, something more alive. So, which is it? Is your brain this perfectly engineered, pre-programmed computer? Or is it something more like a wild, untamed ecosystem? For decades, the computer analogy has been dominant, a complex machine processing information. But honestly, what if that's just not the right lens? What if inside your head it's a constant battle for survival, a teeming jungle where neurons and even ideas are fighting for dominance?
And that's exactly what we're diving into. The brain as this incredible, dynamic ecosystem. Forget fixed wiring. We're talking about a self-organizing system that's constantly being molded and shaped by your experiences. Kind of like how natural selection shapes life on Earth.
At its very heart, Neural Darwinism flips the script. It says the brain isn't built from some rigid, fixed blueprint. No, it's what's called a selective system. It literally organizes itself through this nonstop process of competition and selection. It's really less about being programmed and way, way more about being sculpted.
So let's get into the nitty-gritty of Neural Darwinism, the core idea. We have the brilliant neuroscientist Gerald Edelman to thank for this framework. He came up with this foundational three-stage process that really gets at how each and every one of our minds is sculpted into something totally unique.
Okay, so here are the 3 stages of this neural selection. First up, developmental selection. When you're developing, your brain goes on this crazy building spree. It creates a massive surplus of neurons and connections. Just think of it like a sculptor starting with a giant uncarved block of marble. It's pure potential. Then comes stage 2, experiential selection. This is where life happens. Every experience you have, every skill you learn, it acts like a chisel. It carves away at that marble, strengthening the neural pathways you use and letting the unused ones just, well, they wither away. And finally, stage 3, dynamic reentry. This part is amazing. It's like all of the different regions of your brain are in this constant, super fast conversation with each other, signaling back and forth, weaving all those selected, chiseled circuits together into one single, unified whole. That's how you get a coherent thought or feeling.
All right, with that framework in mind, things get really interesting. Because now we can take this Darwinian lens and point it at one of the biggest mysteries out there, consciousness itself. So let's explore 3 really distinct theories that do exactly that.
First up, we've got a theory called Darwinian dualism. This comes from Miranker, and it takes a fascinating bottom-up approach. It starts not with the whole complex brain, but with something way, way simpler, a colony of bacteria.
I know what you're thinking, bacteria, but check out this core analogy, it's brilliant. On one side, you've got a bacterial colony. What do? They forage for nutrients, they move around in physical space, they compete. Now look at our neuronal assembly. Miranker's idea is that neurons do the same thing, just in a different space. They forage for neurotransmitter signals, they move by changing the strength of their connections, and they absolutely compete. In this model, when a neuron wins and gets to fire, it's kind of like a bacterium winning the struggle and getting to reproduce. It's survival of the fittest at the neural level.
Okay, so how do you even test an idea like that? This is where the theory gets really clever. It separates things into constructs and tokens. The construct, that's the unobservable, private, conscious experience itself. You know, the feeling of seeing red. Nobody can get inside your head and measure that. But the token is the observable, measurable, physical thing that corresponds to it, like a specific pattern of neurons firing. This is huge, because it means we can actually test the theory. Scientists can measure the token and see if it reliably predicts what a person says they're experiencing. All right, so if that first theory was all about the micro level, individual neurons competing, our next theory zooms way out. This one comes from Edelman himself, and it's called the dynamic core. Here, we're not looking at single neurons anymore, we're looking at consciousness as this large-scale neural coalition. So what is the dynamic core? It's this huge, constantly changing cluster of neurons, mainly in the thalamocortical system. And here's the key. Its activity is both highly integrated, meaning it's all working together as a unified whole, and highly differentiated, meaning different parts are doing their own diverse, specialized things. And this is so important. The dynamic core is a process, not a place. You can't point to it on a brain scan. It's an ever-shifting pattern of activity. And this is where the theory just clicks into place. It proposes a direct mapping between the brain's activity and your mind's experience. Think about it. Why does consciousness feel like a single whole experience? That unity maps directly to the integration of the dynamic core. And why can we experience such an incredible, vast number of different thoughts and feelings? That diversity maps to the differentiation of the core's activity. It's a really elegant explanation. Okay, get ready, because our third theory, the adaptive self, is probably the most abstract, the most, well, mind-bending of the three. This one suggests that the self, the you that you think you are, isn't a thing. It's not a pilot in the cockpit. It's an organizing force that actually emerges from chaos. Yeah, check out this quote. It really nails the core idea. The self is not a thing, but an adaptive pressure that emerges from the interplay of chaos, self-organization, and neural Darwinism. So in this view, the self isn't what's having the experience. It's the pressure, the force that organizes and shapes the experience out of all that underlying neural chaos. So how does this work? The theory gives us what's called the PESE framework. Imagine this. Your neural network is like this vast sea of primordial potential experiences. They call these proto-experiences, or PEs. They're just potential. Then the self acts as this adaptive pressure, a selection process. It doesn't choose, it causes a choice to be made. And out of that vast sea of potential, one specific subjective experience, or SE, like the actual conscious feeling of seeing the color red, is selected and becomes your reality for that moment. Okay, so let's take a breath. We've gone from neurons as foraging bacteria to a giant coalition in the brain, all the way to a self emerging from chaos. Three really different theories, right? But they all orbit around that same central idea, that Darwinian framework of selection. So now, let's put them side by side and see how they stack up. And this is the payoff. Let's compare these three approaches. Look at the metaphors. Darwinian dualism uses foraging bacteria. The dynamic core pictures a shifting coalition of brain regions, and the adaptive self imagines a self-organizing chaotic system. They all have a core mechanism based on selection, but what gets selected is different in each. For Darwinian dualism, it's a neuron's opportunity to fire. For the dynamic core, it's entire neuronal groups that get selected for the in-crowd. And for the adaptive self, it's a whole subjective experience being pulled from a sea of potential. You can see how they're all playing in the same sandbox, just focusing on different parts of the game.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? The bottom line is this. We need to throw out that old static computer metaphor. The brain isn't hardware running software. It's a dynamic, living, breathing ecosystem. It's constantly being shaped by competition, by selection, by your experiences. Your mind wasn't built like a machine. It's being grown and re-sculpted every single second of your life.
And I want to leave you with this one final thought to chew on. What if every choice you make, every single idea you have, is just the winner of a silent internal election? A constant, invisible battle for dominance happening inside your own skull. What if who you are right now is just the current reigning champion in a never-ending tournament of thoughts? Kind of makes you think, doesn't it?